You remember those FEMA coffin lining deals that were stockpiled in Madison, Georgia? And finally the owner of the land said, yeah, the CDC, or Center for Disease Control of this area, along with FEMA or something like that, was stockpiling these, using my land to just stockpile these. And there were so many of them, people were like, what are these for? Why are they coming out? And all of a sudden, 2008, these things show up. What's going on, right? And then we had these signs put up on certain interstate highways, you know, not too long after, that would say something like, why is this thing not sticking up here? Hang on. So they had these signs that said something like, you know, decontamination zone or something, you know, exit here. Weird little signs like that. To this date, whatever happened with that stuff? All right, the coffins liners are still there, and the signs are still up, yet nothing's ever been used, you know, no decontamination of any sort. So this is interesting. CDC suggests hermetically sealed coffins for Ebola victims, also known as the FEMA coffins. In a field in the middle of Madison, Georgia, in close proximity to Atlanta and the home of the CDC, hundreds of thousands of airtight coffin liners have laid since 2008. The site is reportedly rented by the CDC. Today, the CDC says that in the event of an Ebola outbreak in the U.S., bodies of the deceased would be required to be buried within, quote, hermetically sealed caskets, which would prevent the escape of microbes during funerals. Funeral industry experts note that hermetically sealed coffins are not common in the slightest for burials. This would suggest that the CDC has stockpiled such coffins in places like Madison, Georgia, specifically in preparation for an viral outbreak. So the question now is, has the CDC been expecting the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans due to infection for at least the past several years? They've had these coffin liners sitting there on standby. Matter of fact, my own uncle was traveling, I don't remember if he was on business or vacation or whatever he was doing, but he traveled and happened to take that route through Georgia for something and said, you know, I heard about this place and I'm going to see if it's, you know, if I can see any coffin liners or any of that stuff out here. And sure enough, they were there, and he stopped and took a few pictures and then emailed them to me. You know, there's a million of these pictures online, so not, you know, nothing out of the ordinary there. But the question has to be asked, why were they ordering in advance? All these years our country has been around. Matter of fact, let's just go into, you know, a little bit past the Industrial Revolution and just say, let's start at 1900. They could make something similar to these FEMA caskets in the year 1900. So for 100 and now 14, almost 15 years, we've never had any of this kind of stuff made and on standby use for anything. And all of a sudden, 2008 rolls around and they're stockpiling the heck out of these things. Hundreds of thousands of these things easily. And that was only one place that they're storing them. They said there was more than one place that they were storing these, not just Madison, Georgia. So I'm listening to Jim Willie a couple days ago in an interview. He's the author of the Hat Trick newsletter that goes out. He's on, you know, financial shows as far as alternative media. Fairly often, you could say. Understands everything about the manipulation of gold and silver. The guy, you know, is no dummy. And he mentions during his latest interview about how China's getting ready to basically set the price of gold and silver. They're going to be taking control of that mechanism. And you would have to say, well, wait a minute, if I'm China, I don't want to let the prices rise just yet, not until I have all the gold and silver necessary. Then we'll let the prices rise. So America, keep playing with your little markets, drop the price for us so we can have a fire sale deal on this gold and silver. That's what you would think with China. But he says that that's ultimately what's going to happen. And during this interview, he mentions, you know, the criminal cabal, the elite, whatever, they're just setting the stage for everything, you know, to end in war most likely. But he talks about, you know, weaponizing this Ebola. It's not just something that came out of nowhere. Oh, a pandemic came out, just happened to be right now when the elite could use something like this. I mean, think about it. We've got the Benghazi scandal being covered right now. It's not really being covered because everyone's so worried about Ebola. All you hear about is Ebola. Not so much of the Benghazi scandal. You still have the IRS scandal out there. What perfectly timed incident this is, isn't it? Having said that, Jim Willie says, oh, you know, the CDC has the patent for this Ebola virus. He says they actually have the patent for this Ebola virus. He says, now what, and he mentions this in this interview, he says, what in the world would the CDC, or why in the world would they have a patent for Ebola if they weren't using it and actually created it? And he also mentioned at least one of the people on board, I think it was the first flight, 370 that went down, missing, where'd they go? It was either out of the one they shot out of the sky, I don't remember. He mentions it. And said that one of these types of people who was actually blowing the whistle on this type of activity, you know, creating viruses for, you know, warfare purposes type of a thing, was on board. Well, he ain't anymore because he's dead. So Jim Willie happens to mention this in this interview, which is mostly about, you know, what's coming in the financial world and gold and silver and China and what they're doing and the deals they're working with Russia as well as Germany and all that stuff. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he mentions that. So what I didn't think about was these coffins. So I'm reading over here at, you know, Zero Hedge, which is an interesting place to even read something about these FEMA coffins in the first place because it's usually financial information only. But it reminded me, hey, wait a minute, what about those coffins? Oh, now this is the exact type of coffin liner you would need. We wouldn't want that deadly outbreak to, you know, go into the water table or any of that stuff, right? So they've had these things in advance. So if this assumption's true, then that means they've known about this in advance. It's all part of their plan. It's all part of their agenda, so that they could do this in the future when they deemed right, which was, you know, since 2008 at least, right? Which means even before that, because they had to make the decision to buy the coffin liners back in 2008. And you would say, well, what other proof do you have of them, like, way in advance of, you know, providing that something's going to happen? And as Lindsey Williams said many times, they put what they're going to do to you in the movies. That's their favorite method, is to put it in the movies. Oh, it's just a movie. It's fiction. It's, you know, it was very exciting, but it was just complete fiction. It's fake. And then it happens in real life. And then you see these little subtle signs. You go back and watch these big movies, years and years that were made years ago. And now that you know, okay, all these events have happened that I'm now aware of, because they've happened now, from 9/11 to whatever, Sandy Hook, you know, in the Batman movie, Sandy Hook, you can go back and then see them sticking out. Now, at the time, you're not going to see them sticking out because you don't know what you're looking for. Now, if you're the one making the movie and you're putting these little hidden symbols and stuff in the movies, you know exactly what you're doing. So I'm sitting there the other day and I see this little headline on one of these sites I was on, you know, and it says something like, you know, the movie Back to the Future, 1984, you know, whatever. And it goes on to show some of, you know, the different series of sequels or whatever, you know, part 1, part 2, part 3. and it said, basically, Back to the Future forecast, prophesized or forecast 9/11. I'm like, oh, come on. And believe me, I believe wholeheartedly 9/11 was a setup from start to finish. You cannot have two skyscraper buildings, one that was hit at almost the very top, like the 100th floor roughly, and there's only, I think, 110 floors, and the whole entire building falls straight down. The other building gets hit center way, it also falls straight down at free fall speed. That means the top of the building hits the ground at free fall speed. In other words, nothing is in its way. It's like dropping a brick off the side of the thing, open air, count how long it takes to hit the ground, boom. That cannot happen when a building is pancaking on top of each floor like they told us. That would cause even a little bit of resistance, and when you combine all those floors pancaking, adds up to a lot of resistance. It cannot fall at free fall speed. There would be several seconds additional, etc., by the time it hit the ground. So anyways, I'm like, Back to the Future, really? 1980s? That would imply that they knew they were going to pull this event off that long ago. But then I thought, well, wait a minute, Papa Bush Sr. gave his famous New World Order speech. I think it was exactly 10 years to the date of 9/11, and on September 11th, 1991, was his giant, biggest speech he ever gave regarding the New World Order, and when we're successful, and we will be successful, picture a world of blah, 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 blah. He went on to give this big old speech just like that. So that was 1991. And then September 11th, 1991. So then you mean to tell me 10 years to the date, the event happened. So let's just go there and say, okay, well, he knew about it then. Well, it's 1991. Then is it a far stretch to say a few years earlier from the Back to the Future movies, sequels and whatnot, that their little hidden signs were in there? Open mind, let me just see this nonsense. Let me just take a look at what this guy's put in front of me. Back to the Future. Oh my God. And I first watched the first couple things, was like, that could be a coincidence. It really could. And then some other interesting things came in, and okay, that's not really a coincidence. Okay, that's definitely not a coincidence. Oh, they even have the Twin Towers on TV, on the one where he goes into the future, that movie. And he's Michael J. Fox plays 3 or 4 roles. He plays his own mother or sister or something in the future. They've got him dressed up. You can tell it's him in the movie, but he's acting different roles on purpose. And he's also the grandpa or something in the future, and he's got these these little leg devices that wrap around his ankle that make you fly or float. And he's not, he's an old geezer, so he's kind of confused, and he's upside down, and he's floating in the door. He comes in, he's upside down, just kind of going throughout the house upside down. And then they go into the living room, and the TV's playing, and it's like it's out of sync or whatever. You know how, remember your TV, it would go, like the picture would either go up or down, you'd see the lines, I'm talking old school TVs, up and down. Now, first of all, any new TV in the future is not going to do that, for one thing, but whatever, it's a movie, they did it, and that's what it looked like. And the picture is actually of the Twin Towers, zoomed in, and they're going up. Almost like they're falling down, except they're not down, they're going up because the TV's going up. Now, if you have the view of the guy in the leg things who's upside down, well, to him, if you flip it over, the towers are crumbling down side by side. It's a little bit of a stretch, right? But when you look back at the scene of the living room, there's actually a Statue of Liberty, green, the little fire thing in her hand, and the hand is just sitting, like, I think the hand's there, and it's just sitting there, nothing else, and it's on their coffee table. So if you look back and say, okay, well, what did the Twin Towers look like with the Statue of Liberty in the view? It was this exact scene. So you have the hand. If you were to stand, take a picture or whatever behind the Statue of Liberty, facing where the Twin Towers are, you would see this hand, the Twin Towers, perfectly. So this is the scene they're setting. So on TV, they're purposely putting the Twin Towers in Back to the Future, the future one. And on the coffee table is the hand of the Statue of Liberty in green and all. Doesn't match anything in the house, period. So that's clearly a set-up scene of this is New York City. Absolutely. Not just a chance that the Twin Towers are on their TV and she says, oh, this stupid TV, I can never get it to work right or something. So I thought that was interesting, but there's a lot more, and there's even at one point where they pan the camera, and it might have been when the lightning struck the clock tower and they're trying to get, the lightning to hit to time the car in the back to give it the power to go back into the future, back in time, so we can get back to 1985 or whatever. And I don't remember if it was that scene or the scene where he makes it back to try to warn Doc, hey, the terrorists are coming to kill you. And then as he goes, the car itself, the van that had the terrorist comes flying by. He's like, oh shoot, they're ahead of me. So he's trying to get there first. And then the camera pans. I don't remember which one of those two scenes, but as it pans, the guy in the video, YouTube, stops it. Boom. Take a look at this. You have a clear picture on top of a banner of like a little business that's right there, of the all-seeing eye in Illuminati triangle. I mean, just like the dollar bill, on the back of your dollar bill, it's right there. As they pan, whoop, pause. Oh, look at that. That's probably something they wanted to put on the scene, huh? That's probably a good place for a hardware store sign at the end. Why would the Illuminati, all-seeing eye with the pyramid, the symbol of all symbols for the Illuminati, be in this film at all? So if it's in there, then all of a sudden all the nonsense that I just spoke seems a little bit more relevant. So all I'm going to tell you to do, go to YouTube and search for Back to the Future 9/11. And you will see this little thing that he put together. And by the time I got about halfway through it, my thoughts of this has got to be nonsense started to change. And then by the end of it, I said, okay, yeah, this is another one of the movies where they were letting their pals and whatnot, and as they say, a sheep, know in advance this is going to happen. Now, how would anyone ever watch that movie and come to that conclusion if the event never happened? You would never, ever be able to. The interesting thing is, because now we have the internet and movies are online, you can edit them, you can pause them, you can slow them down, you can stop them. You could do all. You could go back and say, oh, I wonder what other movies, right? So what I do, I've like trained myself to do this. As I watch some old movie, oh, I remember that movie, and it's on TV, and they're always zooming into the person's face, and I no longer look at what they're saying in their face. I purposely train my eyes, look around the outside, forget the person you've already seen the movie anyways, just see if you can see anything sticking out. And you will see stuff from time to time. The interesting thing is, if you go back to a certain period of time, and I don't know what that is just yet, but older movies, there's absolutely zero hidden signs, symbolism, Illuminati this, that, forecast of future event, none of it. So at some point in time, they made the decision, hey, we own Hollywood now. We've got so much power and control. Let's just have fun with it and put it in plain sight, see who can find this. Well, when they first started doing that, how many people in 1980, whatever, had the technology to edit videos, slow them down, pause them at certain key places? I mean, you had to have your VCR and hit pause with your hands, and hopefully it got the right spot. Nowadays, with 30 frames a second or whatever, video, you could slow it down enough on your computer to capture these special, certain frames if you need to. So now all of a sudden a whole new world has opened up with some interesting stuff. And I'm throwing that out there so that you understand, with the FEMA coffin stuff and everything else, they prepare way, way, way in advance for these events. So if there's anything in the future, like I've known a lot of newer movies, as in the last 10 years or so, have had an interesting picture or event that seems to happen with the, not the Brooklyn Bridge, the San Francisco, the bridge over there. That thing has been broken and blown up, and makes you wonder if sometime in the future that plan is, gonna happen. Or is it just a coincidence that all these movies happen to have this damn Golden Gate Bridge in it that's either been destroyed or blown up or cracked or whatever? You can say this all day long, and it means nothing until it happens. And then when it's that same exact bridge, then all of a sudden everything becomes relevant in these movies to say, hey, they were letting us know in advance. But it is what it is. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. You're going to listen to me talk this. Some of you are going to say this is utter nonsense. Some of you are going to say, no, I understand. I've seen it myself. Whatever. I believe it. Nothing changes until the event happens. And then when it happens, the people who said, oh, you're a moron for even saying this, will still come out and say it was a coincidence. You got lucky. Because that's what the sheeple mindset has been trained to do. Take something that seems impossible and just write it off. Humans wouldn't do that. People wouldn't kill other people in that mass murder, our own country. They bought a bunch of FEMA liners for some reason. Take care.